Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Hello, and welcome to Thriving While Aching, a podcast that inspires and offers insights on how to live a fuller life while navigating the challenges of pain. Last season, we went deeply into the journeys of adults who are finding joy and purpose while continuing to live with the inevitable aches of aging. This season, we turn the spotlight onto the unsung heroes of many of those stories, the caregivers and care partners who empower their loved ones to thrive, whether that's through nature escapades, preserving cherished family memories, or expressing themselves in art or music. And this season, Mike Eidsaune will be here to reflect, share from his wealth of experience, and offer invaluable advice. So, whether you're a caregiver or know someone who is, this season is for you. Let's dive in. Today, we have a special guest with us, Olivia. While she might not see herself as the primary caregiver, her journey alongside her father is nothing short of inspiring. From fostering deep connections through language and shared memories to ensuring her father remains empowered and joyful despite his illness, Olivia's story reminds us that caregiving goes beyond just the physical aspects. She beautifully melds her role as a daughter with that of a caregiver, creating moments that are both poignant and heartwarming. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Lori.
It's great to meet you and have you on the podcast. So thanks for being willing to come on. I know that you're a caregiver alongside on the journey with your father, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how that began and what that's involved for you.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say that I am the primary caregiver by any means. I'm really just there for emotional, physical, any kind of support for both my parents as we go through this. Actually, I'm a little bit off my game this morning because we had a little bit of a scare last night. My mom went to the hospital and my dad he always has someone with him 24/7. So it was a little bit of a shock, but I think everything's going to be okay. So I live with chronic migraine and I'm kind of limited in what I'm able to do myself, which is why I haven't been able to be as much of a caregiver as my mom. She's really the primary. And we also did hire caregivers for my dad as well. When he was initially diagnosed, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. So yeah, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. He did just have chemo last week, so he's definitely, I think, needing more support right now after treatment. So I was worried, but they always protest that they're fine because I think they're worried about me. But yeah, I'll check in after we do this and see what I can do today to be an extra hand.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot for you to be alongside your parents and your dad's journey with cancer while you're also dealing with chronic migraine.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother added layer to it.
Yeah.
But I understand that actually you're a little modest about your role because I understand you're actually the Chief Fun and Creativity Officer.
Well, I like that title. I'll take that title. It's a good title to have. Yeah, that's fair. I really try to find things that can be joyful for me with both my parents, especially my dad. After he was diagnosed, I think it really forced me to take a good hard look at time and sort of the meaning of how time is spent and the quality of how time is spent. And I wanted to make the most of what there is because that's all there is. So yeah, so we try to have fun. When I asked him, what do we do to have fun? He was like, I don't know, you fix my cell phone.
So we're going to add technology to your title as well?
I am the chief tech support as well. But we're doing a lot, actually. I'm really enjoying the time that I get to spend with my dad. And obviously, I'm limited myself because of migraine, and I have to just hang around the house a lot. There's not a lot that I can do all the time, but we're able to even connect from a distance. I only live about 30 minutes away from them. But I call them every night. And we talk on the phone every night. Mm-hmm. And then every night when I was calling my dad, I knew he had started in-home physical therapy. And I was pushing him to do his exercises. And every night, I'd say, did you do your exercise? Did you do it? Did you get up and move around? And he'd say, no, or tomorrow. And finally, he said to me, okay, text me tomorrow morning and just tell me, Dad, get up and move around. And
So you started texting him.
Yes.
And
so I put a reminder in my calendar for every morning, and it just says, Dad, start moving around. But I set it on repeat for forever. And so just started texting him every morning saying, hey, did you get up and move around? Did you do your exercises? And after a few days, of course, he was like, you don't have to text me every day. And I said, yeah, but it's also a way to just check in. And he said, oh, well, if it's a way to check in, then okay.
Olivia, that is such a beautiful example of, I think, being alongside in such a, relaxed and caring way. To send a text. I think some caregivers feel like they're always nagging people. But that's just, I'm checking in, I care about you. It's very low key, but very, very helpful.
Thank you. And I think you're right. I also have the advantage of being the daughter. So I get a little bit more slack, I think, from him as far as how to push him. And he says to me, feel free. I want to hear your opinion. Tell me what you think. I want to know. And I think he's maybe coming in the package of a child. Sometimes it's a little easier to hear, possibly.
But you're so consistent and loving with it. So, I hear that. And what are some other things that you've done?
Well, because we were texting every morning, he would respond sometimes just like with a little Tagalog phrase. He was born in the Philippines, grew up in the Philippines, but he did not teach my brother and I Tagalog growing up. So we, had no fluency in the language. I actually had an incredible opportunity in college to study Tagalog in school, which is how I started to learn. And so I would respond to him with my very basic words and sentences, and he would compliment my Tagalog. And I said, hey, we should practice Tagalog. And he said, okay, do you mind if I correct you? I said, of course. I want to learn. I want to get better. So I started texting him in Tagalog every morning, and he would respond in Tagalog, but he would respond in full paragraphs, and I'd have to muddy my way through them and figure out how to respond, learned a lot of new vocabulary, and then would respond in Tagalog and receive my corrections. And it's been great. It's really great for me to practice another language, to keep that mental part sharp, that learning part. And also, I think it's nice for him to communicate in his own language, something that might come easier to him. And yeah, I think it's great for both of us. He's getting to be a teacher to me, be a father. He has something to share, something to give, something to pass on to me. And it's great for me to have that connection with him, to be working on something together, to be learning from him, to be challenging myself.
And Olivia, it feels so important that you have found this where he gets empowered. I think sometimes when a person is always receiving care, they begin to sort of get more passive or shrink in. And you have found a way to sort of open an avenue for him so that he's the expert and he's, as you say, the teacher. And it feels like a beautiful intimacy between you as well to be doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it really does. It's special. It's something I look forward to every day. According to my mom, he looks forward to it. He's waiting by his cell phone.
Wow.
For my text. And we continue these conversations over text all day long. He'll ask me what I'm doing today and what I'm going to have for lunch. And my grammar is poor. And there's also in Tagalog, there's like a formal and an informal way of speaking. And with a parent, you want to be formal. So it's about not translating in the easy way, but using the more complex version of how to, I don't know if it's conjugate, but create the sentences in a formal structure. So, yeah.
So, Olivia, it sounds like you've developed such a routine with your father, a really supportive one. You can tell that your daily texts brighten his day. I want to turn to Mike Eidsaune, and he's our expert caregiver this season. Mike's going to provide some of his insight and deeper support for caregivers and their loved ones as they navigate this journey. So, Mike, I'm thinking about what Olivia shared about her father getting excited about receiving these messages from her, the messages about exercising and teaching her Tagalog every day. Can you speak on the benefits that caregivers and loved ones receive when they keep up with a routine?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you smile sort of hearing Olivia talk about it. And it's also, I think, really important to, when you're listening to Olivia talk about the role she's playing. She has this tendency to sort of downplay what she's doing as, texting in the morning, learning the language, having fun. She almost describes it as she's getting as much out of it as her father. But I think for a lot of caregivers, really understanding how impactful that tiny little interaction can be in the morning, whether it's just a text or a quick phone call, that can be so critical. I think it was the CDC came out with a report not long ago that spoke to the negative impact of isolation and equated it to, like a pack of cigarettes a day. I forget what the exact analogy was, but it was that significant and that detrimental. And what Olivia is doing is she's really countering a lot of that. Where her father could be alone and isolated and depressed, she's really the solution, the prescription to that, which is really amazing to hear. And it's so great that she's embraced it and she's finding such positivity in it, because obviously their relationship is grown and is thriving as a result. So that's good. I think having family caregivers really understand that even the littlest thing can be monumental in terms of impact. That's a really, really key takeaway for me.
And the key takeaway for me in this is that she's made it something regular. Somebody has once said it's not so important that you do a great thing. It's more important what you do every day, and that she does this every day so he can count on it and she can count on it. That makes such a difference.
Absolutely.
So Olivia, we've been discussing the importance of this routine and this willingness to do this so-called small thing, but actually knowing that when you do it every day, it makes a difference. There's another thing you're doing with your dad that puts him in the limelight of the teacher and the storyteller.
Yes. I mean, this is my passion project right now. It's something I'm so excited about. I decided to create a podcast, and I had been wanting to create a podcast for a long time, but I wasn't sure what the content would be, what the subject would be. But when my dad got sick, his friends who are Filipino tennis players started reaching out to me just to check on me every week and sort of really be a support system for me. And I just was so touched by that. I had always seen this side of them my whole life, but it was really reinforced for me, this soft, caring side of these Filipino athletes. And I just realized that I wanted to tell their stories. And so I decided that my podcast would be about Filipino tennis players, and the first season would be about my dad's story, which is kind of an incredible story. I'm really excited to do that. I guess I'll give a little background on the story. I won't give it all away because I'm creating a podcast on it.
Of course.
But so my dad was born in the Philippines. He grew up there. He was born in the northern provinces and moved to Manila with his mother and 4 sisters at the age of about 9 after his father passed away. And they were very impoverished. They were all living in a 1-bedroom apartment, sleeping on the floor together. And his mom was a laundry woman. Her job was to wash people's clothes, hang them to dry, and then iron them. And this was the 60s, so not electric iron in the Philippines at least. And she made 3 pesos a day, which was just enough to support them. And I guess there's also typhoon season in the Philippines, which prevented her from being able to work. So she would often send my father to her employer to ask for an advance on money just so they could eat. And I know that they went hungry at times, and it was one of my dad's goals to never be hungry again. So they lived in an apartment near a sports complex, and my dad would go to the sports complex after school, and he had a friend who worked there as a ball boy for tennis players. And he was wandering around one day, and his friend was like, hey, these hitting partners, they don't have a ball boy today. Can you step in and be their ball boy? He's like, well, what does it mean to be a ball boy? So he got a crash course in becoming a ball boy and was a ball boy for these hitting partners that day, and walked home with 4 pesos, which is more than his mother was making. And he gave them all to her. And from that point on, he became another provider for the family. So to make a long story short, I guess, and not to give too much away, he continued to go back and be a ball boy at the sports complex. And then he started teaching himself to play tennis and then started playing junior tournaments and then won the junior title. And then the country started sending him to other countries to play for them. He played the Asian Games, Southeast Asian Games, and eventually won the title of the National Open. So he really pulled himself up from nothing to become a champion.
What a story, Olivia. And it's such a beautiful way that you're finding how to help him connect with his life force that enable him, to make these decisions and take these risks and really put himself out there. And as he tells that story, I would imagine there's healing in it for him and for you to be telling it in a podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really lovely when we sit down and do interviews. I've heard a lot of these stories before, but now I'm getting to dive deeper and there's details that he hasn't shared before. And it's another way for him to sort of teach me. And really, his whole life has been about survival. And this newest challenge is just another obstacle to face with that sort of resilient attitude. And I learned so much from him about how to keep thriving, to keep fighting. So it's very special to me.
And you're helping him connect with that.
Yeah, I hope so.
This is definitely a project that is close to your heart. And what a great way to strengthen that bond you have with your dad, but also to encourage his thriving and his resilience. Mike, as you hear Olivia share about this podcast project, do you often see a therapeutic benefit for caregivers when it comes to family storytelling?
Oh my gosh, yes. I've been in this space for over a decade, the caregiving technology and sports space. And throughout that time, a lot of companies have sort of come up to help family caregivers capture those stories, just because of the importance to the relationship, the importance to the recipient. But what's so innovative about Olivia is the way she's handled it is she's not only doing those things where she's able to capture the story for her and her children and the children's benefit, but making it into a podcast sort of doubles down to her father how important his legacy is. That she's sort of making this statement that, no, Dad, people are going to want to hear this story. Like, how meaningful is that to him? And again, I think culturally as well as generationally, legacy is huge to folks in his generation. And so what a special thing for her to do, and what a special way for her to show her dad how important his story is and how impactful it can be to others. Amazing.
Absolutely, Mike. It really is incredible the way it reverberates out, this project, this pet project that is so important for her father, and then beyond that into the world. So, Olivia, your passion for storytelling is something you're exploring on your podcast. And I'm sure some of this also comes out of those long conversations that you have with your dad on your walks with him. Tell us what those walks are like.
Yeah, well, he is limited in what he can do. I'm also limited in what I can do, but he does really try to keep up his stamina and just wants to be active. So he tries to walk at least once a day, often twice a day. And if he knows that I'm going to be coming to visit, then he'll save his walk to do with me. And we'll walk, and sometimes it's just being quiet together, being together. And sometimes, we get into some of the deeper topics, again, about the family in the Philippines. Since he was 11 years old, has been taking care of his 4 sisters and continues to support them. And, I realize from the vantage point that I'm at now, that is a legacy that I want to continue. And so I try to ask about what he does to support them and try to think about what I can do should I need to step in to continue that. And yeah, it's sometimes very deep conversations in a way that I guess you don't get to do if you're just sitting across from each other, but that added walking, that meditation kind of feeling brings a lot out.
Absolutely. And really, I think you're helping me, and I'm assuming our listeners, think about all the facets of caregiving, the ability to have conversations and connect with someone's story. And I'm going to go back to that chief officer for fun and creativity, because these are a lot of creative ways to help a person stay in touch with who they are and not just have the identity of the person who's sick or the person who can't. You're really, through the conversations and the activities, helping him stay connected to that. So what would you pass on, Olivia? What have you learned and that you could pass on to others who are listening?
Yeah, I think you make such a great point. Something that I've adopted saying is diagnosis does not equal death. So there is life to be lived with and after diagnosis. That's just one part of what people are going through. And so I would really say search for what there is aside from diagnosis, from illness, from the challenges, because people don't have to lose their identity to illness. And there are many things that you can figure out to celebrate together, to be joyful together. It's all about making the most of what is, of the time that there is, because it's all a gift to have. Right now is a gift to have. So making the most of that, I think, is the most important.
And it feels like that's exactly what you are doing, is making the most for yourself as well as for your father.
Thank you. Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, I just enjoy so much the connection that we have, the time we get to spend together and learning more about him. And yeah, honestly, it's not the way that I think anyone would want to come to this realization of how to like maybe live and experience more deeply, but it has changed my life in a positive way to try to suck more out of the marrow of life and get more out of every moment.
So you are a receiver as well as a giver.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I guess the hope is that we're both getting something out of what we do together. Yeah.
Wow. So any other words of wisdom that you would share?
Yeah. I mean, I will say I try to have a positive and optimistic outlook. And I think that's something that I really learned from my dad, because he has had to face challenge after challenge and continues to face them with optimism and fight and drive. And so I've learned that from him being a role model in that way. But I won't say that it's not difficult at times and that it isn't a struggle and that it isn't a lot to grapple with. So I would say that it's okay to sit with the hard stuff. But what I try to do with the moments that I get with both of my parents is to put that stuff aside so that I can really focus on what's right in front of me.
And Olivia, how do you sustain your own resilient attitude?
Oh gosh. I do try to be optimistic and positive and focus on, as I've been saying, like what there is instead of what there is not, and trying to not ruminate and worry about what could be. Again, just focusing on what there is. But I guess I will say one thing that I love to do for myself is I'm a cyclist. I love cycling. And every year I do a century ride, which is 100 miles in a day.
Oh my goodness, 100 miles in a day.
Yeah, which it's difficult, but I just love it so much. It's what I spend all summer preparing for. I've had some difficulties with migraine preparing this year and last year, but honestly, I was doing pretty poorly last year with migraine and I did my best time on the century ride. And
congratulations.
So yeah, moving my body too, I think keeps me positive.
And having a focus, something you are working towards that's very meaningful to you, that you move your body, but also you feel like you're achieving something that's significant.
Yes, that's such a good point. Having goals, something that I'm constantly driving towards, keeps me, that eyes on the prize kind of mentality. Yeah.
Having that sense of purpose, and it doesn't have to be this huge like life purpose, but the purpose of the ride. The research really shows that is one of the things that helps us stay resilient.
Yeah. And I will say, you hit a point every century ride, no matter how many you've done, and I've done 7. You hit a point where you're like, I don't know that I can keep going, and you have to dig deeper. And it's that point, it's really that point that is the reason that I keep doing it, because when you hit that point and you find a way to get past it, it's a reminder that you can really get past almost anything. And finding that dig deep moment is something that I try to come back to over and over again. Yeah.
And it feels like you're helping your father do that too. Find those dig deep moments.
Thank you. I mean, I constantly feel like I'm learning from him in that too. But yeah, I shy away from trying to take credit for it because I just think he's so incredible in his own right. But yeah, I hope that I'm doing my own little part to keep him driven, make him feel supported, to make him feel like himself.
And giving him a goal with the podcast and with the learning the language, and again, helping him kind of step into some new areas, which feels, again, very life-giving.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I know that he looks forward to those interviews and he's disappointed if he's not feeling well enough to do one. And it's also a way for him to connect with other people in his life. Like I was asking some very specific questions about his parents and how they met. And he's like, I don't know. So he had to ask his sister. So it's a connection for them. them too that isn't even with me involved, where they get to reminisce.
So the ripples go out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing the richness of your story and this very different way for us to begin to really consider what caregiving is when we're helping those we love thrive even while aching.
Thank you so much. That means so much. Thank you for asking the best questions I've ever been asked about this whole situation. Truly, it's so nice to focus on the positive.
So, Mike, this has been another fabulous journey with someone who's doing inventive and important things as a caregiver. What are your key takeaways?
I've got two key takeaways from the interview with Olivia. The first is how important the small things are. The idea of texting, she was doing it as sort of an exercise to make sure he's doing his exercises and physical therapy, but that really effortless interaction led to so much more and such a positive impact in his life and their relationship. So those tiny little things that all caregivers can do, all family members can do, I think is really, really critical. And I think that segues nicely to one of your points, which is consistency, right?
The regularity.
Right, the regularity. And then I think the last thing is just the importance of storytelling. Olivia talks about how important the legacy of her father is to not only her, but to him. And encapsulating that in a podcast was just a really, really innovative and special way, I think, for her to go about doing that. I think for most family caregivers, you don't have to create a podcast in order to sort of have that type of impact, and most of us won't do that. But just asking those questions, sitting down with tea or coffee and snacks and just asking questions about their life so that they can tell that story, that's going to have that same sort of impact of not only do I find your story to be very important, but passing on your story to my loved ones and to other family members is what I'm trying to accomplish here. I think that message to older folks in this generation is really, really incredible, and I think has a lot of powerful benefits.
And from that, I also take that the importance of helping someone physically is one part of caregiving, but helping someone mentally and emotionally. So storytelling, a sense of a legacy, a sense of my life has mattered and is important, and it's important to someone I love, not just sort of generically.
Yeah. And then one last thing out as a key learning, and I think this broadly applies not just to family caregivers, but to those who may be supporting a family caregiver or know a family caregiver, the importance of positivity. Caregiving more often than not can feel like a very negative, a very trying, stressful, guilt-ridden activity. And if we can turn toward the positive aspects of it every once in a while, that can be a reprieve for family caregivers. It can feel like a little bit of respite. And ways we can do that are just asking leading questions that get folks talking about that positive side of it, the time you're getting to spend, what you're learning about your loved one. Those aspects of family caregiving are always there, they're always present, but oftentimes they don't get talked about just because they're not the most pressing issue of the moment. So, the power of that positivity and, obviously her reaction to the interview itself and the questions you asked, I think really speak to that.
Yeah, it was sort of amazing to know that just paying a little attention to someone who's a caregiver, inviting them to talk about that, giving them some space as they are giving space to their loved one makes a big difference all the way around. And to conclude today's conversation, in this season of Thriving While Aching, we've decided to close each episode by providing suggestions of tools that family caregivers can use. So, Mike, why don't you tell us about the tools you can suggest after listening to our guest today?
So for our story with Olivia, we find that there's a couple really interesting aspects to her story that caregivers can really take away and utilize. One is storytelling. The importance of storytelling and legacy goes a long, long way in both engagement with our care recipient as well as passing on the messages that care recipient leaves with us. There's a couple different interesting tools that family caregivers can utilize to capture that story or just even evoke a response. A couple of them are putting together photo books, putting together biography books, using a voice memo app on our phones to sort of record those interactions. But I think the most important part of this whole process is just being intentional about it. Whether it's exchanging letters with our loved one or recording a Zoom call, all of these things will do what we're trying to do, but it's making the decision to do it and executing on that decision with our loved one. Another thing we can utilize in this process is a platform like Story. Storii. It's a really interesting software that sort of makes that process of story capture much easier, and something that I've seen come out here in the last few weeks that's become much more popular. It's a paid subscription. By no means does a caregiver need to use it. It just might make the process a little easier. The second thing we heard with Olivia that I think is really important and a tool that family caregivers should think about taking away is the importance of the small things. Utilizing something as simple as a daily text message can go a long, long way to engage that individual and to make sure that they're feeling noticed and seen. Something as simple as a text or even a letter, as I mentioned before, can go a long, long way to engage our loved one every day.
We hope that you found this episode inspiring. We want to thank Olivia for sharing her experience and insight, and we hope our discussion will help shed a light on the important role of caregivers in patients' journeys. And of course, we want to thank you, our listeners. We believe that the journey of caregiving is as unique as each person it touches, and we are inspired by our guests, who are such marvelous examples of helping their loved ones thrive. We encourage you to keep the conversation going, sharing your experience and questions with us by reaching out at podcasts@ghlf.org and be a part of our thriving community. Be sure to check out the toolkit for caregivers that Micah shared at the end of each episode. For more enriching content and resources, visit the show page at ghlf.org/listen. This podcast is made possible with support from Kenview, sponsor of the Global Healthy Living Foundation. Until next time, may you and your loved ones thrive with unwavering strength and grace.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.